All right, here we go. Jack Harlow, hip hop's most non-essential rapper. Oh yeah, non-essential rapper. Jackson Harlow. I'm going to be the biggest white boy since the other white boy talking about vomiting and okay. Let's see.
Commercially successful yet not celebrated, cherished by...
What the hell? What's going on here?
Jack Harlow is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Commercially successful yet not celebrated, cherished by non-hip-hop fans but overlooked by rap's hardcore fan base, he finds himself in a spot that may be uncomfortable but is in no way unfamiliar. For decades now, white rappers have always tried to make their mark on the culture and be taken as seriously as black rappers. But more often than not, they find themselves frozen in time at the point of their greatest hit. And for the most part, the only way is down. Because when they're not seen as bringing anything new to the culture...
Oh, hell no. Why did you put Lil Boink on here? Oh, hell no. Validity down, minus 30 points.
And are just rehashing the current trendy sound, i.e. Ian, Lil Mabu, etc., then it's incredibly easy for them to get forgotten. Yet because they often get more attention...
His name is Lil Boink, by the way.
...than black rappers who are in the same lane and often make more compelling music, it makes people suspicious of them. And if we know one thing
G-Eazy is tough, y'all.
Is that they don't
unpopular opinion.
Fed an artist by the industry. This, in essence, is what separates an EMINEM from a G-Eazy, or an LP from a Snow, or perhaps a Mac Miller from a Jack Harlow himself. As in the years that have followed the release of what should have been his breakout album in 2022's Come Home, The Kids Miss You, the charismatic Kentucky rapper has had a strange road to walk. Because on the one hand, he's a perfectly passable rapper, and by all accounts, seems like a good guy. But the problem is that when the industry happened to come across this pale-skinned MC with a radio-friendly approach to songwriting,
they couldn't help
to spawn viral content online, they inevitably saw dollar signs. And at this point, he fell into the trap that's all too familiar for white rappers.
Well, scratch that. I think it's in reverse. Because he was a nerdy, quirky gamer guy. And he's seen, and him and his team seen how marketable it is to be, I'm not about to say that out loud, but a more charismatic, stoic, enthusiastic person. So he changed his brand. Brent Faiyaz just got it different. I always talk about that. Brent Faiyaz and Jack Harlow are and were in the same boat. Brent Faiyaz and his team seeing how marketable and brandable it would be for him to become, Mr. Nonchalant, Mr. Swag, Mr. Charisma, Mr. Charm. You know what I mean? So that was his way in. And now guess what? Brent is out with a kid and a wife and done.
Jack was on the come up, he was
there
a rapper who seemed to have organically garnered his audience, as he'd been rapping since he was a kid. As a result, there was no reason for anyone to feel like he was an industry plant or that he was a threat to the status quo of hip-hop. But as the hit singles racked up, this perception began to change. And as Sean C. argues, when it comes to Jack being accepted among the ranks of mainstream hip-hop, the success of What's Poppin' and later First Class was a gift and a curse that changed how the culture treated him. Suddenly thrust into a lane of megastars who attend fashion shows, Jack was on top of the world as he approached the release of Come Home, The Kids Miss You. So much so that in a 2022 interview with Rolling Stone, he basically told them that he was going to be the king of hip-hop. Being number one is what made EMINEM so hard. He was in the dog pile. I want to be the face of my generation for these next 10 years. We need more people in my generation that are trying to be the best. And you can't do that with just ear candy vibe records. You gotta come out swinging sometimes. A press run that hyped him up as though he truly was the next up, Jack clearly articulated the lead he thought he was in during every press obligation around that time. And that was one of the leaders of the new school.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. You get pushed the same way that Cole, Kendrick, Drake, they were keeping each other in mind to some degree over the 2010s and pushing each other. Huge shout out to Doja. You have like Lil Baby. Lil Baby's amazing. I think Baby Keem has a massive trajectory. There's a lot of good ones.
However, what separates Jack Harlow from all the artists he mentioned can't be understated. As with Doja Cat and Baby Keem especially, like them or hate them, they have a distinct sound that is unmistakably them. While when Come Home, The Kids Miss You dropped, the sound was so middle of the road that it was hard to pin down his identity at all. Reviewed by Pitchfork in their scathingly negative review as Trick Pony without a discernible trick, the same review would go on to describe him as a competent rapper who doesn't flow intricately or write impressively, and a pop star who struggles to carry a song on his own. Ouch. With the album pretty much getting trashed across the board
Damn.
and performing commercially in terms of sales, Jack had a project that sold upwards of 100,000 units. But at what cost? Well, for those who never saw the hype or our previous video about Jack Harlow, which you should probably check out before this video, it just cemented their perception of him. Basically, that he wasn't great, nor was he terrible. He was just another white rapper in a sea of white rappers who never truly found a sense of who they are as an artist.
For most of 2022, Jack Harlow was inescapable. He was on at least 2 top hits that I feel like happened last year.
Yeah.
There was countless discourse about him online. He won a BET award, made a movie, hosted a college football show, and then quickly laid an egg with his subsequent major release.
That nigga said laid an egg.
To regroup.
Boy had a sketch run, ain't it?
And figure out what went wrong. It was an immense musical anticlimax that I think a lot of people saw coming, but more and more people were happy to see happen. Something about Harlow's rise to fame rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. It was a bit of a paradox though, because while Harlow had so much fanfare and hype as well as hate, his actual music was just mid. It was like perfectly in the middle and disposable, which is probably why he didn't go anywhere, but it didn't make sense that he had so much hype and hate in the first place.
Rejected as the next Drake,
That's an interesting point.
To claim this identity with his next project, Jackman.
I like Jackman a lot.
Back to Basics project. This album was received far better than Come Home the Kids Miss You, but even then, people felt like they knew why he created the album in the first place, and that was the negative response to his attempts to go fully mainstream. And even then, Pitchfork didn't go any easier on him, stating that trends and other people's opinions mold his records. The internet said he was too cornily commercial.
You can't win. You can't win. That's why you have to literally, man, head up or head down on what you're working on. Head up or head down. You can't put your head to the left, to the right. You can't win, bro. These fucking critics, man, they waiting for you to come out with some shit to just ultimately inspect and pick at, bro.
So for the duration of this album, he positions himself as a very serious rapper. Still, although the project was generally better received by hip-hop, it muddied the waters as to who his audience truly was. Because for those who might have loved what was being served up on Come Home the Kids Miss You, this was likely a curveball for them. And more than likely, it was viewed the same way by his record label, who didn't put anywhere near the same promotional push behind the project.
Yeah, that's why this is weird to me. He just sold way too many records, and they put way too much money in him just now, and he did all right. I know you have to spend money to get a return, and this is silent. This is quiet, so I would be interested to see. This sound like less than 30,000 copies.
Just as Joe
about Jackman?
The album debuted at number 8 on the charts with just
33,000. Wow.
Without dwelling on it for too long or even touring his new...
Let's see. Bro, I like Jackman. Bro, I've been smooth for so long. I'm trying to get... Bro, I don't... Fuck being likable. I'm trying to be unbreakable. I like Jackman, bro. I guess, let me take my feelings, I guess, biasness aside. Man.
Album, Jack would be ushered back into the commercial lane with a song that took 6 songwriters to produce. Released just 7 months after Jackman didn't spawn a single hit, Lovin' On Me became a #1 without anyone really understanding what happened. A catchy, radio-friendly pop tune, its rise was so inconspicuous that Yassine rightfully declared that it was the fakest #1 ever. As for how he did it, the answer, as is always the case with Jack, is that it was nothing new. Instead, it was merely relying on a formula that had worked the last time he scored a chart-topping hit right down to its rollout. Definitely the sample, said Kyle Dennis of Billboard. That melody coupled with a beat that feels familiar enough to recall Drake's The Motto, but distinct enough to feel like it's its own entity, makes the track with several key components to latch onto. More importantly, like First Class, Lovin' On Me finds Jack rapping to the ladies, and there isn't much of that happening in rap music right now. Having used the same kind of TikTok marketing that helped make First...
Because that's who is paying for the push. Especially white girls. Let's not even talk about that. You go on TikTok right now and see all the white girls that are singing these songs just because they look so good and they so bad, they so attractive, they so clean. They got their eyelashes done, nails done, got their wig on, whatever. They are pushing that even more. So, I mean, really and truthfully, that's smart of Jack to make songs more catered to the ladies because they are where the bread is at.
Much of that happening in rap music right now. Having used the same...
Once you get the women to fall in love with your whatever you're doing, your music, your lifestyle, your persona, once you get the women to fall in love with that, the money gonna follow. Because guess what? You get a woman to believe you.
Kind of TikTok marketing that helped make First Class a hit, and focusing on his female fan base, Jack managed to put himself back on top, and the higher-ups at his record label, Atlantic, are likely celebrating. Considering how this formula paid off again, it seems highly unlikely that he'll be given the chance to do a record like Jackman again. Because whether he'd like to accept it or not, 3 number ones in 3 years means he's officially a cash cow in the eyes of record labels. But it isn't so much about Jack or his music itself, but because he fulfills a need that the music industry has. As whether they'd like to admit it or not, they're always seeking the next white superstar.
When it comes to like the mainstream point of view, most people are like, oh yeah, here's a new one. And they adopt kind of the hip hop style, add nothing to it, move from it, and people kind of forget about him. And then the next one comes in, do the same thing. With Jack Harlow, I think people look at him as so much more authentic because he is or comes across as such a nice dude. And he seems really respectful for the most part of other cultures.
This was such a long time ago. Look at Sean C with Fantananio.
In their demographic from what I've seen. Never have I seen that level of personality able to carry someone so far when the music is just so average. There's nothing about it that takes anything farther. I don't know what it is about white artists that just makes it so, yeah, this is the one. When there are a million other of the exact same of this guy that are black, that do the same thing and that do it better for the most part.
As opposed to
that is most definitely Sean. Like to this day, I'm gonna be honest, Sean C is very consistent with that. Like even with black dudes, even with black reactors, Sean C is very consistent in, you know, you being a music exec. You feel me? As a black dude, speaking to the people like, you know, y'all know how I get down. I don't give a damn. Black, white, ugly, fat, skinny, tall. Psh. Now I love my black folks, of course. Of course. But, hey, a lot of them don't get no passes neither. This shit is trash. This shit is wonky. This shit is janky. This shit is danky. This shit is boo-boo.
Exact same of this guy that are black, that do the same thing and that do it better for the most part.
As opposed to being a conspiracy.
And Anthony couldn't wait to.
Well-documented,
but don't you think
about hip-hop history that began with Vanilla Ice? Because although he started out as just a white kid trying to step into a world where he was the outlier, Vanilla Ice's success taught the music industry a valuable lesson, and that was if they wanted maximum profit and crossover appeal to middle-class white America who spent the most money, then a white figurehead was essential.
They embraced me, man, and my whole crowd was always black. I never thought I'd ever play for white people until my music went #1. And when it went #1, I went from smaller crowds to huge stadiums. In rap music, it just hadn't been done like that before. So for me, I was just like, whoa.
With Ice Ice Baby, the music industry had pulled off a successful experiment.
That shit was crazy.
And tried to go back to the well ever since with questionable success. For Ice's part, he admitted back then that his success came to a certain level of manufacturing, as well as his skin tone. Being white helps me, I guess, but I wish it didn't, he told the New York Times. My being white had something to do with it, but not much as they say it does. It depends on the contract you sign with the record company. They can make you #1 if they push you enough. And that didn't necessarily mean smooth sailing for Vanilla Ice, because while he was the most successful rapper of his ilk, he also set the precedent of being accused of co-opting the culture. Chewed out by Arsenio Hall for lying about his background, Vanilla Ice was one of many white rappers who'd come into hip-hop without ever truly advancing it.
Arsenio,
instead, he towed the line of what was popular and reaped the rewards.
Yes,
While
he did.
He may have come into the game with the best of intentions, ultimately, money talks.
I was 3 car payments behind on my 5.0, and I was 19 at that time. It was like
narc. This is some narc ass shit, bro. I mean, it's just, like I'm gonna take it into, I guess you could say, my world, right? when we were on stream and we heard, I think we reacted to this or like just, went over it. When we heard Queso, right? One of the biggest streamers on Twitch, gamer, Queso, talk about why he started streaming, why he got into streaming. On one hand, I'm not saying that streaming has to be a 100% selfless act and a selfless reward, but his was more on the selfish. Now, he is where he's at, doing his thing. I am where I'm at, doing my thing. But I'll never forget, Queso on the podcast with Jinxie, he said, the reason why I started streaming was because, I was just bored. I was just bored. I was sick and tired of working. Same thing with high school. Like, I was just sick of school. Like, I was used to watching everybody on YouTube. Watching the Corey Kinshins. I was watching everybody. I was watching them. And I was like, man, I could do that. There comes the inspiration. And he was like, I was just so bored, so I just started streaming. And I didn't have money to do da-da-da-da. And I was lonely. So it's just, I just can't help but to spot out the narcissism. You know what I mean? Can't help it.
3 car payments behind on my 5.0. And I was 19 at that time. It was like I won the lottery, man. It's like, what do you want me to do? At that point, the hip-hop community had kind of labeled me a sellout. So I did. I sold out. I took the money. I sold way out. And
look at that. I sold way out. I mean that term is just getting thrown through the washer, through the ringer so many times, Sell out, sold out, like,
He had kind of labeled me a sellout. So I did. I sold out. I took the money. I sold way out. And I think anybody in my shoes would have done the same damn thing.
Although he's nowhere near viewed as a sellout to the same extent as Vanilla Ice, there's no denying that Jack is undergoing a process of corporatization. Suddenly given brand deals with Doritos, KFC, New Balance, and others, Jack even recently made the transition into acting with White Men Can't Jump. In some ways, a move that could be seen as his equivalent of Vanilla Ice's providing the soundtrack to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie with Ninja Rap. To make matters worse, he was suddenly being compared to other people who transitioned from hip-hop to movies but aren't necessarily respected by the culture. And when he was hit with one comparison in particular, he didn't know how to respond.
Calmatic compared you to Mark Wahlberg, says you were going to be the next Mark Wahlberg. What does that mean to you, especially coming from somebody so talented and so great like Calmatic?
It feels real good, I like Mark Wahlberg, so I'll take that.
Suddenly taken from being
like what?
Drake and calling himself the hardest white dude since the one with vomit on his sweater, to being compared to Marky Mark, it's clear that whatever ideas Harlow has about himself and his place in hip-hop, the industry have other plans. Just look at...
Which he said multiple times on Jackman, I gotta say. He said multiple times on Jackman, like, he looking at his phone too much. He's dissecting the comments and the critics. Hey, he said that on multiple occasions. Now, somebody can say it, but not live like it. Two different things. But somebody who says it and then makes the adjustments and the corrections to live like it, that's a different story. So, we haven't heard nothing from Jack really since.
Got the rollout for Lovin' On Me, where he previously visited the Breakfast Club and other spots like that. Jack didn't promote the single on the usual hip-hop media cycle. Instead, he appeared on the Call Her Daddy podcast, whose 5 million monthly listeners are predominantly white females. Because at the minute, this is what Jack Harlow is doing. He's taking mainstream hip-hop as it stands and repackaging it to be sold to an audience of women who thirst over him. He's not doing anything new, nor is he trying to advance the game. He's just doing what sells. And if that remains the case, he'll always be held at arm's length by hip-hop. By contrast, this is also where Eminem thrived. But he had to learn the hard way that he had to find a sound of his own.
That's
Eminem
crazy.
knows, unlike most other walks of life, that his skin color is actually kind of going to be a barrier to his goals. Nobody wants another corny white guy trying to be black and trying to rap. And he had to learn this the hard way with his first independent album, Infinite, which sold like 5,000 records.
Once Infinite flopped, the Slim Shady persona was born, and the rest, as they say, is history. Similarly, this is a crucial difference to Mac Miller, who actively found his own niche in the game. And
that's right. Shout out Mac.
Instead of trying to take it and run with it, acting as if you came up with it or this fresh new idea that's just for you only, there's a respectful way to do it.
Hey, subscribe on YouTube.
The only few to be able to do that, and no one giving for it.
While no one is saying that Jack Harlow isn't capable of doing something genre-bending in his own right, the problem was that where Mac and Eminem both pivoted in their career, Jack is now in the era of his career where he's a chart topper. And at that point, there's too many eyes on you to be risky and experiment in the same way. And unfortunately for white rappers, all it takes is one misstep and you're cemented into a space you can't get out of.
That's so true.
Just look at Macklemore.
Oh, hell no.
Took off, he was seen as a commercial entity, and the subsequent album, The Heist, further solidified that.
Oh,
then the
hell
unthinkable
no.
happened, and he won a Grammy for Best Rap Album over Kendrick Lamar. But rather than embrace it, he apologized to K-Dot publicly and was immediately accused of pandering. And no matter what happens now, it's still the first thing people think of when his name pops up.
I'm struggling with my own, damn, I'm benefiting from the system that I've been calling out since I was 20 years old. And here I am at the highest level of artistic merit, the Grammys, and here I am benefiting from this same that I've been talking about. So I was conflicted. People want to say oh, it was guilt. He just feels guilty about being white. It's that's so surface level. Was there an air of that? Absolutely. Was that the reason? Absolutely not. At the forefront.
By saying that K-Dot's music was more worthy of the recognition than his, he basically openly admitted that he was merely emulating the culture, not advancing. Much like Macklemore, Jack Harlow hasn't necessarily done anything to disprove that theory either. And now that the label understands his earning power, it's likely to be all take from here on out.
Yeah, whoever dressed him for this with a dress shirt, a red tie, and a orange suede jumpsuit with Air Force Ones, God bless you. God bless.
Whether or not that's his intention or not.
No matter how much a white rapper tries to be respectful and tries not to be harmful, the forces of capitalism and commerce and these corporations, they're going to use
How you feel me, Chico?
that person as a spear to penetrate every other aspect of the culture.
That's why you can't give a fuck. White, black, fat, you can't give a fuck, man. You can't. Look at Lizzo. She black as shit. Black as shit and big. And now guess what? She's making a whole different campaign about being more fit, eating healthy, tracking your macros, tracking your calories, being fit now, being more in shape. Why I'm being great till it gotta be great. Don't text me till the Lizzo, would you text yourself back?
And even as they're just minding their business and trying to make art, the harm will follow them regardless of how hard they try to avoid it. No matter how much effort is being put into the culture, no matter how much genuine talent is present in these white artists, their whiteness will always be the most important and valuable aspect of their art. It legit sucks for them.
Positioned as a hitmaker rather than a true hip-hop artist, Jack Harlow has been handed the baton by major labels to lead.
Does this title say join if you're under 5?
With his label eager to
come on,
continue
Jens,
to
come on.
feed him hit songs, Jack finds himself in a tough spot. He can either follow the white rapper formula.
They will be saved? Hell no.
But risk being forgotten in hip-hop's history.
Who worrying about saving
or
them?
he could dig deep, take a gamble on himself,
not
and break
not
away
me,
from the white
shit.
rapper curse by producing a genuine genre-bending album. Only time will tell which path he chooses.
Only time will tell. That was a good ass video, bro. Good ass video. Jackson, man, Jackson.